Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of 30 July 2013. Tonight I have a knife review of a large fixed blade. This particular one is the S.O.G Jungle Canopy. The Jungle Canopy is one of a 3-blade series from S.O.G. They have the Jungle Primitive, the Jungle Canopy, and the Jungle Warrior, I believe. This particular one, of course, the Canopy. And the Jungle series from S.O.G is a value-priced line of knives produced in China using 8CR13 MOV stainless steel. .19 inches thick, craton handles. And let me tell you some of the things that S.O.G says about this knife. I read some of their marketing copy, and frankly, it kind of sounds like Lynn Thompson could have written it. Let's see, they say things like, when the only thing that stands between you and them are your tools, blah, blah, blah. You know, it sort of has that zombie theme without saying zombie, or without toxic green anywhere on the knife. Their craton handle touts their patented digi grip, which is sort of a sprinkling of molded checkering in the craton. Interesting blade. Before I start going into depth about that, I want to talk a little bit about the company. S.O.G is a company, I think, that started out sort of as a group of contractors that designed and supplied blades to Special Forces military, I think in the late 60s perhaps. And what put S.O.G on the map excuse me, was their rather uniquely designed Bowie knife. It's one that they made specifically for military personnel and then later marketed to the civilian public in many versions, still making some versions of that knife today. It was kind of cool because it had sort of a double swooping swedge or clip in the top of the knife, and they were very high quality and they're highly regarded. At some point, S.O.G decided to be sort of a larger, more mainstream knife company. As they have been on that path, they've had some hits and misses, and oh gosh, they make a lot of American-made knives that are kind of funky and maybe a little overpriced for what you get, and then they've got some overseas-produced knives in their Fusion line. I read quite a little bit about their Jungle series, and I'm not sure that they're marketed under that Fusion line of S.O.Gs or not. But they're definitely, they're budget-priced Chinese knives, and they're certainly not S.O.G Bowie 2.0 quality. But for $40 and a 10-inch knife, you're not going to expect a whole lot. Frankly, as I've followed S.O.G over the years, I've been a little disappointed in some of the directions they've taken. And this knife, although it's got some capability, it kind of confirms that disappointment. And let's sort of get into it. And before we talk specifically about the knife, let's talk about the sheath that comes with it. Now, when you're buying a 10-inch bladed fixed blade for $40, retail price of $70, but can be had, oh gosh, on eBay and other secondary sources for about $40. In that price range, you're not going to get much of a sheath. And this is a sheath constructed of nylon with some sewn-in plastic for protection of the blade or keeping it from cutting the nylon. You've got a large belt dangle that's got a sort of a hard but flexible plastic liner. It doesn't exactly fit the nylon very well. But you know, it holds the knife. And that's kind of all you can expect for 40 bucks. It's got a retention strap with a decent quality snap. And there's a little utility pouch where you could house a small sharpening stone or maybe some fire making equipment. You know, let's not knock it. It's got a lanyard hole at the bottom that you could lash it to your leg, keep it from swinging. I think adequate for the type. And that's really all we need to say about that. And then let's talk specifically about the knife. Let's go through really quickly some specifications. As I said, blade length on this thing 10 inches. Handle length 5.5 for an overall length of 15.5 inches. And yes, thickness, once again, 0.19 inches. Weight on this knife is 19.4 ounces. So basically almost 1.25 pounds. Very broad blade. I would put it at maybe a little over 2 inches at its widest point. It is a full tang knife, overmolded with a craton handle. Kind of an odd appliance on the back of the knife. It's not, you know, you're not going to hammer tent stakes with that, I guess, because this is the tool that comes between you and them. I guess this could be used as an impact device. That would hurt. Some interesting lashing holes. I'm not sure quite what the purpose of those is. I can't imagine tying this to a stick and using it for a spear. But they are there, and a nice generously sized lanyard hole that does go through the tang of the knife. Let's talk about the blade steel choice. It is Chinese 8CR13 MOV, which is generally referred to as the Chinese equivalent of Japanese AUS 8. And the thing about Chinese steels is you really never know what you're getting. I've seen knives in 8CR that do perform exactly like a well-done AUS 8, and then I've seen some that really seems to behave more like AUS 6, you know, a real soft, low-carbon stainless. Don't know about this one. As you can see, the knife is hollow ground from about 1/3 breadth down, maybe almost half. So that 0.19 thickness is retained for over half of the breadth of the blade, and it is kind of a weight forward knife. The broadest point is right here where the belly starts, which I think would probably make it a decent chopper. You know, the name of the knife, Jungle Canopy, you know, you envision sort of a machete application, something that you might use for blazing a trail, or, you know, hacking through brush to create a trail, maybe removing small limbs in a single swipe. And I think this knife would do that. I'm not sure why it needs to be so darn thick and heavy for that kind of an application. You know, if you're humping it through the jungle and you're trying to clear small limbs and branches out of your way, swinging 19.5 ounces for very long, I think you might get a little tired. What about other, you know, woods applications for a large blade that we would normally use a knife of this size for? I don't know if, you know, chopping through a good-sized log is going to be the strong point of this knife, because there's going to be a lot of resistance. The hollow ground is pretty steep and deep. Whatever wood media that you're chopping through is going to get hung on this shoulder pretty hard. I can see a lot of calories being expended because it's just not going to bite very deep, I don't think. Small branches that you can whip through in one shot, I think no problem. But as a large diameter wood chopper. I think there might be other designs that work better. Same could be said for batoning or splitting wood with this knife, although it's going to be adequately strong at the tip to support batoning. Again, without a good gradual wedge shape in this, and you can actually see it if you look at the tip, how abrupt the hollow grind is. Trying to get this to focus. I got so much blade here I can't hardly get around my tripod. There. I sort of tend to think of this knife as more of a wall hanger than something that's really usable, just because the design is so funky and not super functional, which is kind of too bad. You know, the blade shape is great for a chopper because it is weight forward. The grind just isn't right, and if you notice the nature of the grind, it's pretty Chinese. I mean, look at the waviness in that where the grind starts. Kind of too bad because it's sort of nicely set and finished. Has a pretty cool handle. It really lends itself to a chopping motion. Decent edge on the knife too from the factory. The problem is here that I see too many other knives that can compete in this segment for about the same price that are just more well suited to using in the woods. And a lot of them American made. You know, you've got the K-Bar Large Heavy Bowie, you've got the SP series from Ontario, all American made stuff in 1080 to 1095 or oh gosh, I can't remember the steel Ontario is using now in their SP line. Is it 5160, I believe, which is a little less prone to rust than 1095. You guys saw my heavy use test, or not the heavy use test, but the sharpening video of my SP5 Ontario Bowie. That knife is just a lot better suited to what we would normally in America use a knife for in the woods than this one is. I just think more functional in a lot of ways. And that SP5 I think I paid $50 for 4 years ago, and you can buy similar Spec Plus Ontario's real close to that, maybe for $10, $20 more, but not a lot. I just think S.O.G perhaps has gotten away from what made them S.O.G. They seem to be trying to sell lots of knives for cheap prices without really thinking it through. And you know, this knife has some elements that are really neat, and it has some kind of flaws for what it's designed to do. It is, you know, attractively marketed to people who say, "Man, I want a cool big knife, but I only got $50." Yeah. I wouldn't think you would starve to death with a knife like this in the woods. I think you could probably make a fire with it. I just think there are other knives that might do it better. But it's kind of cool, and it's kind of inexpensive. Not a bad looking blade. You get your $40 worth, guys. So if you kind of like the way it looks, it's not going to rust on you. Probably hold an edge decently. You could do worse. So that is my less than enthusiastic but not horrible review of the S.O.G Jungle Canopy. And thanks, Danny, for donating it for the cause. I'll be sending it back to you soon. Grace and peace, guys. And remember, the word is sharp.